ahí los agarrados dentro del área, Cucurella en el ajo, viene el córner de Odegaard, primer palo, toca Merino.
¡Qué golazo!
¡Mikel Merino! Sorprendió a todo el mundo, incluido a Robert Sánchez. Gol de Mikel, goleador Merino. Arsenal 1, Chelsea 0.
Excuse me, boss. What team do you support? What, Chelsea? Fuck Chelsea. Chelsea shit. Fuck Chelsea. Chelsea shit.
Mikel Merino. Mikel.
Fuck Chelsea. Fuck Chelsea. Fuck Chelsea. Fuck Chelsea. Chelsea shit.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, it has been a while, but goodly morning to you.
Goodly morning to you too, Andrew. It's very welcome.
It is. Overdue, one might say.
Yeah. I can stomach everything, really, if we win. It all feels just much more palatable.
Everything?
Don't push me.
It does just feel better when we win, though, doesn't it? Because, you know, it's not exactly laugh-a-minute stuff at the moment, or hasn't been for the last couple of weeks. And the games have felt a bit like, a bit of a chore, like trying to push a boulder uphill kind of vibe to it. But when you beat Chelsea, you know, even if it's not the greatest game in the world, I think there's still plenty to enjoy, whether it's our happiness, their misery, a delicious cocktail of both of those things. I think we can get on board with that.
I think we can. Any win over Chelsea is certainly a good thing.
Yeah.
And I did think we were good value for it, despite it not being maybe the thriller that the TV cameras expected they were going to get.
Did they expect a thriller, though, really?
I don't know. I didn't see the TV coverage, but when I went on social media afterwards, a lot of the comments from neutrals were about it being a very poor game, and I imagined that had been influenced by the TV coverage. Did they sell it as a bit of a disappointment, or? I
mean, I didn't watch any of the build-up because I don't usually watch any of the build-up, so I don't know if they were billing this as a Clash of the Titans type thing. I guess it was probably just like, well, it's Arsenal versus Chelsea. It's a big London derby. There's some top four jeopardy at stake. But I couldn't say if they were doing that Sky thing of really hyping it up to be something more important than it actually was. I mean, they probably did because that's what they do. But I don't know if I certainly didn't feel let down by the spectacle. If there were neutrals who were expecting it to be better than it was, well, you know, that's on them.
It's two teams without a centre forward and two teams missing their best attacking player.
Yeah.
Bukayo Saka still recovering, and Cole Palmer obviously
got lost on the way.
On the way to Chelsea. Got distracted by something.
Squirrel!
Yeah, and he was gone. And maybe you could tell a little bit. I think maybe, you know, some of that cutting edge. It's been a big theme for Arsenal, but I think it was even more true for Chelsea. I mean, there were long periods of this game where Chelsea had decent amount of possession, knocked the ball around, but struggled to really create anything of note. So yeah, I thought they were much more capable than us in that respect.
I had a look at the stats, actually. I was just curious this morning looking at the stats. Chelsea were like 60% possession in this game, and really the only chance they had was that Cucurella shot, which we'll come to in a few minutes. I mean, it might be a reflection of Chelsea's lack of firepower or threat, but, you know, they did have Jadon Sancho, Pedro Neto, Nkunku, and they brought on, who did they bring on? Who cares who they brought on? Other lads who came on and were just as ineffective. But my point was more about whether this was perhaps more reflective of Arsenal's defensive parsimony or organization and discipline, where we looked after we got that goal and the pendulum swung a little bit in terms of possession for Chelsea. We were just like, yeah, like we can hold these guys at arm's length. And there is that risk, I guess, when it is just a 1-goal lead. But we didn't feel in any way troubled by Chelsea. And they still had, despite some absences, a few decent players in attack.
Yeah, and I think this is two teams as well who aren't necessarily in the best of league form. I think was it 3 games without a win for Arsenal, 6 games without a win on the road for Chelsea. That's obviously really derailed their season somewhat. I have to say, I think you're right. I think we held them at arm's length. I don't think they posed massive threat. I think they had 2 attempts on target, both from Cucurella. I did find Mikel Arteta's comments about them after the game slightly odd. The degree to which he was kind of praising Chelsea, saying they're the best attacking team in the league. I don't know if he's just hasn't watched Liverpool, or it was an odd one, I thought.
I thought that too, but I suspect it was more about instilling whatever bit of confidence he can in his team as a defensive unit or group than being accurate about what Chelsea are capable of from an attacking perspective. I think if you do have Palmer, Madueke, Nicholas Jackson with the players you've already mentioned, there probably is a significant amount of threat from Chelsea. And maybe statistically there are things that we're not aware of in terms of XG or XG build-up or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
But it just struck me that he was, in the wake of winning a game, saying something that might give his team a bit of confidence going into not just the rest of the season, but specifically the Real Madrid games, where they definitely have a lot of attacking threat and they might have some of the best attacking players in the world at their disposal. So if, as a way of boosting the confidence of your players, you can convince them that they've done a brilliant job in snuffing out a really good attacking team, maybe that's it. Maybe also, though, the players have eyes and can see. And like, I think as a player, when you've had a really, really difficult game, when you've defended with your lives, when you've had to, put the body on the line to stop shots and your keeper's made a few saves and you've really, really had to work hard to deny the opposition. I would be surprised if there was an Arsenal player who came off that pitch yesterday going, oof, that was hard work against, well, that could be the best attacking team in the Premier League.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. That's a good point about kind of lifting the confidence ahead of Madrid and instilling belief in the players. I did actually have a look at the sort of non-penalty XG Premier League, and Chelsea are second in the Premier League to Liverpool. They're ahead of us by some way. We're sort of down in, I think, 6th or 7th, or perhaps even 8th. So, they are a team with considerable attacking threat when they have those players available. I just think Palmer is so important. Someone said yesterday, I don't know if this is true, that he hasn't yet played at the Emirates Stadium. If we can keep it that way forever, certainly in the shirt of another club, then that'd be fine by me.
Yeah, coward. That's what he is.
He's bottled the Emirates
Just
again.
Bottled the Emirates. Bottled it again. So, in terms of team selection, were you a little surprised that Ethan Nwaneri was on the bench, or that with Gabriel Martinelli he didn't maybe go with a more dynamic front three, let's say, with Martinelli, Nwaneri and Trossard? I mean, as it turns out, I think you could make the case that Mikel Arteta got his team selection pretty much spot on in terms of how the game played out and who won the game for us. Or do you think it maybe said something, A, about maybe needing somebody on the bench who could change the game if you required it at some point in the second half, but B, also what Arteta feels comfortable with at this moment in time when it comes to the centre forward and what he expects from a player in that position. And that guy is obviously Merino physically and technically, for all the discussions that we've had about him. He does sort of fit the bill in that way.
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised. I think the main thing for me is just how many games Ranieri's had to start, more than ideal. And, you know, I made this point in my video, but I think Mikel Arteta's preferred pick at left back is Miles Lewis-Skelly. But even so, I think he manages his minutes a fair bit and takes him out here and there, and gives Calafiori the odd game just to kind of ensure that he doesn't run him into the ground early in his career. And I just don't think he's had that opportunity with Ranieri because we've had so few forwards available. So I wasn't too surprised he took the chance to sort of give him a little bit of a rest and take the pressure off, take the burden off. He also wants to have a look at Martinelli, I imagine, ahead of Real Madrid, see what he's got in his legs, see where he's at. And I think that was really encouraging from Martinelli, particularly in the first half. I thought it was a real threat. The Merino centre-forward thing is really interesting. We're running out of chances to try something different, which leads me to believe that this kind of is the plan for the remainder of the season. Maybe I'll be surprised and he'll roll the dice against Madrid with Trossard through the middle. I just sort of feel like he seems quite wedded to this idea at this point in time. Maybe Saka coming back will change that, but my hunch right now is that there's kind of everything's geared around this idea of Merino doing that job until the end of the season. What do you think on that? Yeah,
probably. I mean, the thing about Saka coming back is it might make Merino a bit more effective in that centre-forward position when you think about some of the quality of the deliveries that Bukayo Saka can produce, I just don't think we have any other option apart from, Trossard as a false nine, which, we've seen it has worked okay at times, but not brilliantly. And Martinelli as a centre-forward is certainly something I would have been curious to see or would be curious to see at some point. But it does feel a bit like... It's a bit like Zinchenko in midfield.
Yeah, we'll only see it when he's got 1 foot out the door.
Well, kind of. Or, it's been something that people have talked about quite a bit. But in terms of Arteta going with it, it doesn't seem like something he is massively into.
Yeah.
I
agree. I think that, we haven't seen it for a long time. Really, in any meaningful way. And, my memories of it really are when Martinelli first broke into the team under Unai Emery, playing in some of those Europa and League Cup games and being quite effective as a sort of a kind of Luis Suarez style all-action centre-forward, pressing from the front. We really haven't seen that for a few years, I would say. And now with players coming back, I don't think we're particularly inclined to. I think the Trossard through the middle thing, we did really well with that for a period of time. When he first came into the club, I think in his first half season, there was certainly a stretch where we were playing with a front three of Martinelli, Trossard and Saka pretty effectively and winning a lot of games doing it. But yeah, I just think... this team seems to be built partly around having that more physical centre forward there, and Merino just seems like the closest to Havertz. And the way that Arteta spoke about Merino after the game as well, the way he's adapting to the role, learning about the role, it didn't sound to me like an experiment he's about to kind of disregard.
It's one of those weird ones where ideally you'd want a better option. And that's not a criticism of Mikel Merino, by the way. I think he's done, on paper, I think you can argue he's done really quite well in that centre-forward role. I think, it's 4 goals and an assist in the last 6 or 7 games, something like that. So it's not bad by any means. But I understand why pretty much everybody would prefer if we had a different kind of striker up there or a more natural centre-forward. That's completely normal. But that issue of adaptation, I think, is an interesting one where... Do you remember years ago when Robin van Persie was put in that role as the sort of lone centre forward?
Yeah.
And it took him, and I'm not comparing Van Persie and Merino in any way, but I think at the time it took him just a little while to get used to that position. It was something that he talked about. It was something Arsene Wenger talked about. And then it sort of clicked and it went stratospheric, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if you accept that there can be a period of adaptation, if the last few weeks have kind of been that for Mikel Merino and he's, getting to terms or coming to terms with that role and that job a bit better, does it not make more sense just to stick with him rather than try something different, having put those sort of, for want of a better phrase, formative games and appearances under his belt?
Yeah, I think there's certainly an argument there. And our season is not just, but largely about that Real Madrid tie at this point in time. I think a lot comes down to, how do you think we're going to beat Madrid? Do you think we're going to beat them with kind of sweeping counter-attack moves that require a striker running 50 yards onto a through ball and finishing in a one-on-one situation? Or do you think we're going to beat them with a slightly more attritional strategy that relies on crosses and set pieces, and where Merino's threat, is something worth persisting with? I think I'm probably more in that latter camp. I don't think we're going to beat Real Madrid playing like Real Madrid.
No. No.
So, maybe we don't need an Mbappe or a Vinicius or whoever it might be as the centre forward. Maybe a Merino will work for our means and our desires across that tie. I think he's done really well. And don't get me wrong, there are points in games where you see what we miss. There were definitely moments where, I think Arteta referenced this, where we kind of had opportunities to play passes into space. He said the same against Old Trafford. We had 11 moments where, we could have broken into space. And I actually think probably playing Merino through the middle prohibits that a bit. He's not a guy who's going to win a race with most centre-halves over 30, 40 yards. And I think that limits the angles and the diagonals and the types of pass you can play. But when it gets to other aspects of centre-forward play, the hold-up play, the penalty box presence, and the finishing, actually, I think he was quite unlucky not to finish this game with 2 goals.
Yeah.
He has done really, really well, and about as well as you could expect a player for whom that's not their natural position to do.
All right, we'll come back to him. I think the first half an hour of this game, Arsenal were really good. Really good value for the lead, good value for ultimately the 3 points. And I think there are probably moments where we could have done a little bit better. There was the Martinelli chance, I think, when Sanchez plays the ball directly to him.
Yeah.
I was looking for him in that exact moment when it happened to just play the ball to Rice on the edge of the box, because he was in a good shooting position. And after a couple of goals in recent games, I was looking for him to have a go. But, ultimately, Martinelli had a go. There was a chance for Trossard really early on, which I think maybe he should have gone with first time, shouldn't he?
Yeah. What, the one for the edge of the box?
Yeah. He took a touch, and it was sort of like the one that he had against... Could have been the one he had, like the one he had at Old Trafford, where instead of hitting it with the inside of his foot, he used the outside of his foot or the top of his toe. It sort of swerved the other way rather than curling inside the post. So I think we were pretty much on top. Chelsea were not great. They were immediately into the bitching and crying and moaning and whining and complaining about everything. From the very first whistle. Do you think we should have had a penalty?
I'm not convinced we should. I've only seen it a couple of times, but it looked to me to be sort of quite high on the arm, it looked more like the outside of the shoulder to me. I know that I think the VAR review was actually that they just felt his arm was in a natural position. Is that right?
I think that's what they said. I
don't know.
I mean, I think what he's trying to do is, chest the ball, and then it comes very clearly off his arm. So he gets it wrong. Like he dives to chest the ball, hits his arm, then he starts complaining about being fouled, which he wasn't. I think you've seen them given.
Yeah,
I've seen them given for sure.
Yeah. For me, it's like I totally accept that sort of it. Yes, it did hit his arm, but I don't know. I think if that had been given against an Arsenal player, I would have thought it was harsh.
Probably. I think, but
it was a talking point for sure in the game. I think Arsenal had a really good first 20 minutes, half an hour in this match, and probably should have got more from it than they did. But then, set pieces broke the deadlock. And for all our discussions in recent weeks about struggling to break down teams and, chance creation, Mikel Arteta has kind of banged on about the fact that set pieces did that for so much of the season. And set piece FC are back, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while since we scored from a set piece. I think, was it against Spurs?
Yeah, I think it's 7-8 games, something like that.
Maybe more.
Really?
Maybe more.
But yeah, it's very welcome. And a bit of a change of approach, maybe, in terms of what we were doing on the set piece. I mean, the movement seemed slightly different. It wasn't just, there seemed to be more of a general flooding of the near post rather than the far post.
Yeah, it was almost like a wall of players at the near post, including Gabriel, who usually starts around the penalty spot. And I think maybe in one of the early corner, was there an earlier corner? I can't remember, but it looked like Pedro Neto was the guy being tasked with marking Gabriel. I was watching a little bit of the Carabao Cup final yesterday, sort of in and out, and they had Alexis McAllister trying to deal with Big Dan Burn.
How did that go for them?
Not great. Not great, although I think the keeper is dodgy for the first goal. Anyway, the size difference was obvious there, but then for that particular corner, and it came after actually good work from Gabriel Martinelli, by the way, a drive into the box. It's one of those where I think he could have gone down. We probably would have got a free kick, but he stayed on his feet, and it was Raya put the ball behind for a corner. That wall of players there at that near post was an interesting tactic for sure. I don't know if it's to block the goalkeeper's sightlines. I don't know. Did Arteta say something in the press conference afterwards about how they had sort of planned something like that, but it wasn't exactly that particular move? I
think he said not exactly like that. But you could have fooled me. It seemed to come off perfectly. I think the goalie, Sanchez for Chelsea, gets a little bit sucked into the near post. I think the melee kind of attracts him. And that plays into our hands as well. But Merino does exceptionally well to turn that ball on like he does. Whether or not he thinks that's going to drop into the far corner quite as neatly and beautifully as it does, even to get that direction on what's quite a low trajectory corner from Martin Odegaard, I think is seriously impressive.
It's a very, very good finish. If it is, a finish that he's trying, it's perfect, inch perfect. Could not be more perfect. I think Alan Smith on commentary was going, he's not really going for the finish there. He's just trying to nod it on towards the back post, which he might well be. But hey, it came off.
It was very much towards the back post. It was basically in off the back post.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I would say is the speed with which he celebrates to me suggests a degree of intent. Like he doesn't look particularly surprised, or there's no double take that the ball ended up in the net. So we know how good he can be in those situations.
Yeah. The thing is, there isn't an Arsenal player on the back post, really.
Yeah, that's the curious thing. When Arteta said that, you sort of assume, okay, so maybe it's a Merino flick and someone
at the back post, yeah. But there isn't anyone.
No.
So
is it Jurrien Timber maybe who's closest to that back post, but he's not particularly close. Who knows? It's funny. I took my sister to the game yesterday, and she's sort of notionally an Arsenal fan, but she doesn't watch a lot of football. And when Merino scored that goal, she was like, I just don't believe those headers are on purpose. She was like, I just don't buy that someone's actually knows what direction that's going to go. And I think there is a little bit of truth in that I think, the stats will tell you headers are very exceptionally difficult to direct accurately. But
I think, in that particular circumstance, though, there is only really one thing he can do.
Absolutely.
Beyond headed up in the air or headed, wide of the near post.
Odegaard,
yeah, exactly. The only thing he can do is to sort of hunch down and try and flick a header, somewhere on target towards the back post. If someone's there to poke it in, or if it goes in, that is the only option available to him there, and he executed that perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a big moment, and I think you can debate whether it's a good thing that Arsenal need these set pieces to kind of break games open for them at times. But the fact is that it is vitally important for this team, and it has been such a potent weapon. So having it back and working could be a big moment.
I think at this moment in time, it really is important, because we are lacking not just firepower, but maybe a bit of creativity or a bit of, craft in the way that we make chances. So to have set piece goals back again, or a set piece goal back again, which ultimately turned out to be the winner, by the way, is hugely important. That's, that goal is worth 3 points, basically. So,
yeah. And 6 goals, I think, this season for Mikel Merino, which, albeit playing up front some of these games, that's still a very handy return. And, I think we would have been hoping for that sort of contribution from him this season.
Yeah. 4 goals and an assist in the last 7 games.
Well, that's very good.
In all competitions.
The thing we sort of say, I feel like we always say, is like, well, if a new signing had done that, but there's truth in it, I think.
There is truth in it. Okay, what else in that opening period? There was the incident with Wesley Fofana with Declan Rice.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
I think I broadly agreed with sort of the decision, which was that there was I forget the wording, but that it was sort of not very significant.
It lacked sufficient force.
Lacked sufficient force, yes. I sort of broadly agree with that. I think it was naughty, and he knew what he was doing, and I feel like we've seen Arsenal players punished for less at times. But my sort of interpretation of how I want the rules to be applied, I'm not upset that he wasn't sent off there. What about you?
Well, call me a woke lefty liberal if you like, but I kind of feel that if you deliberately stand on somebody's leg with your studs, your metal studs, and it is a little bit of a stampy, kicky thing, and I agree, it's not brutal, it's not like he's trying to really do him damage there, but there is intent. There's no need for him to do it. I feel like if that was Granit Xhaka, he's absolutely getting sent off.
Did he get anything?
No, he didn't get anything. He got a booking later on.
Yeah.
There's a video doing the rounds. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's from... he does all the compilations on social media. Let me see if I can find him. I think it's like Kimo...
Kimo, yeah.
Kimo FC. At Kimo FC has done a little compilation of Fofana's day. He got booked for throwing the ball back on when we were about to take a throw in. So we know how much of a stickler for delaying the restart Chris Kavanagh is, of course, but not stamping on the back of somebody's leg. There was another one with Trossard, where I think they were both going for the ball at the same time, but he was late. He caught Trossard, on the shin, which I think could have been a yellow card. The foul on Trossard, where he just pulled him back, should have got a yellow card for that, probably. And I think it was Pedro Neto who got booked for complaining about it. And then there was a foul when he was already on a yellow card when we got that free kick in the second half. A foul on Miles Lewis-Skelly, which... it was borderline second yellow as well. So, yeah, I think it's just one of those weird things, right? If we were playing football against each other, right? And, we have a little bit of an issue and I raise my hands to your face and I touch you on the face. I can get sent off for that. I know it's a little bit different when it comes to feet and everything else. But I do think that if you deliberately stand on a player with no intent of playing the ball's gone, you've already made a foul, I think, that could easily be a red card, and maybe should be a red card, because regardless of force, it's about the action, which is completely unnecessary. There's no need for you to do that. So,
I do hear you. I mean, I'm watching this compilation now, and I have to say, bear in mind I was at the game live, so I wasn't watching everything with the benefit of TV replays. It is kind of extraordinary that he stayed on the pitch when you look at it as a kind of cumulative effort across the afternoon. And that first one with Rice, there's more force to it than I had seen in the one replay I'd seen. I do think that easily could be a red card, seeing it back now. I also think that there's this sort of curious situation where, like, how does he get no card? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like part of the problem with violent conduct is it's red or nothing. And I think that the officials sort of back themselves into a corner sometimes where they're like, well, I don't quite think that's a red, therefore the player completely gets away with it.
Well, is this not a quirk of the way VAR operates, in that it can check if it's sufficiently violent for a red card, and it can recommend a red card to a referee, but it cannot say to the referee, okay, maybe it's not a red card, but it's definitely a yellow. You should book him here. That seems...
But is that the law as well, where it's like the law says violent conduct is a red, and therefore this is deemed not violent conduct, so there's nothing. But I just feel like that's too big a gulf. Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, there might have to be, and I know this was talked about recently with the Mateta situation, where he sustained that terrible head injury. But I think there maybe should be sort of degrees of violent conduct.
Completely agree.
Because this, to me, it is nasty, but the ball is there. You know what I mean? So to me, this is different from somebody swinging an elbow in a situation off the ball, for example. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. And I've sort of long been of the opinion that the sort of 3-game ban for violent conduct as a catch-all for everything just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Like, we go back to that example of, me touching your face, and I get sent off and I get 3-game ban for violent conduct, ostensibly for violent conduct. But if I were to, like, go at you, studs up, catch you on the knee, and wreck your knee, I get a red card and I get a 3-game ban as well. For this, it's the same. That can't be. I know there are exceptions, and the Mateta one is a bit of an exception, but it's always felt to me like there should be a sort of scale between, let's say, 1 game and 6 games for violent conduct, and a panel can adjudicate on how serious they think that violent conduct is, because there is such a spectrum, such a range of offences that can work in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with that in terms of what happens post-game. And I think even within game, that there should be room for more flexibility. Like, you and I can discuss whether or not that should be a straight red. And I think it very well could be. But I think if it's not, it's absurd that it's not a yellow. That is ludicrous. And obviously that contributes to this player staying on the pitch in a game where clearly, I mean, he shouldn't have done. You look at the Trossard challenge, you look at some of the others, he's insanely lucky that he wasn't sent off.
Yes. So that first half an hour, very good from Arsenal. And then it sort of swung Chelsea's way a bit, didn't it? I felt like yesterday, I don't know what your feeling was inside the ground, and it's not just about the last 15 minutes of the first half, but maybe in the second half at times as well. I felt like we were just kind of half a step off Chelsea when they were in possession, when we were trying to win the ball back in the challenge. We just weren't quite at the pace of the game, if that's the right way to put it. I felt like it was just a little bit too easy. Maybe there was an element of us just saying to Chelsea, have the ball. we don't really care because you're not going to do anything with it anyway. But I felt like we could have been a little more front-footed, a little more aggressive at times to win the ball back and to, to play a bit more of the game. Maybe it was part of the tactics. I don't know,
Yeah, like is it crazy to suggest, if we think what Mikel said post-game was maybe about Madrid, could some of the tactics that he implemented here be about Madrid? I also think just playing with Merino up front, it is difficult for us to press. I think that's a function of missing Kai Havertz. But yeah, it was a really weird game. Like I felt like in both halves we had a decent first 20 minutes or so, and then there were just long periods in the second half of halves where Chelsea had lots of the ball, but offered next to no threat with it.
Yeah, I mean the only chance was that Raya one where it sort of squirted through Raya's gloves. Did it go through his legs or just through his hands? I don't quite know, but it felt slow motion when I was watching on TV. It was like, oh no, this is just going to do that thing where it goes, bloop, 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 it just curls inside the post. Thankfully, it didn't. I'm sure David Raya is a very relieved man.
He was his reaction was very telling, wasn't it? He's a very unflappable guy. He's very cool in all situations, but you could tell that he had his heart in his mouth on that one. But that really was it. I mean, they just didn't offer much threat on our goal, and I guess credit to our back four for that. But it also lacked a bit of intensity. I did sort of think we're into mid-March now, and this was maybe the first game this season where I thought it's just that I wouldn't use the phrase on the beach because both these teams have got things to play for, but just that little edge of intensity I do think was absent.
It's a bit surprising though from a Chelsea perspective. I can kind of understand it a little bit from an Arsenal perspective because we are in second and pretty comfortable, particularly after yesterday's win. I think it was an important win for us, by the way, because obviously Forest had won the day before, City had dropped some points, so we needed 3 points to pick us up again anyway after those 3 games without a win. It was important in that perspective, important for Champions League qualification, but that lack of intensity from Chelsea, when you consider where they are in the table and how tight that group of teams is sort of from 4th down, for them not to play with a little more aggression or attacking intent. And again, maybe we just have to give Arsenal credit for this, for just strangling the game. We've talked about control, haven't we? And maybe that's been evident in other ways this season, like we've had a lot of the ball and we haven't really done enough with it. And we've been, as we've talked about, sort of architects of our own kryptonite, where we've played the games in such a way that we've made it difficult for ourselves because of what we're missing up front or because of, the absences that we have. Whereas, is this another way of demonstrating control? Is it a different kind of control? That's all I mean, where you basically, as we've said, hold the opposition at arm's length. You let them have the ball. You stay organised. I watched Chelsea pass the ball from left to right and right to left. And I don't know if the horseshoe of doom is a thing that Chelsea fans or podcasts talk about or will talk about, but that was pretty much what they had going on yesterday. So is that them or is it us? I'm more inclined to give us credit for completely nullifying, the game that they wanted to play.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. And as I referenced at the top, it's 2 teams missing absolutely key attacking figures. And so what you've got to do is just be as efficient as possible. And I agree it was a really important result. I think in the context of the Premier League table, it's a big 3 points.
Sure.
And one that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about the remainder of the Premier League campaign.
Second half, there was the Merino chance. Actually, was it a Timber cross?
Yes. I mean, I think Merino does really well there.
Very smart volley.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a very controlled contact for a player who's not a centre forward. He really kind of doesn't, get under it or overhit it. He places it really beautifully. And I think it's actually a very good one-handed save from Sanchez.
It is, yeah, it's a good save.
But yeah, I mean, I think with that sort of contact on that sort of cross, 8 or 9 times out of 10, you've got yourself a goal there. And we're talking about another Mikel Merino
masterclass.
But that was a sort of a good moment from us.
Did you enjoy the 5 minutes it took us to take a direct free kick?
Oh, imagine all the narratives going through my mind at that point in time.
Declan Rice over the ball and everything. So
yeah, was it Rice into the wall? I forget now.
Yes, it hit. I think it hit Enzo Fernandez. It wasn't a great effort, to be honest.
No, I had such high hopes.
Me too. Then I felt foolish.
We're about 1 in 50, I think, now on direct free kicks.
You did a piece, actually, didn't you?
I did the numbers. Yeah.
Numbers.
I had some help with all the fun numbers, but we're not miles off the Premier League average. That is the thing. There are some real outliers, like Southampton have got a way better conversion rate of free kicks over the last 5 years than anyone else, exclusively because of James Ward-Prowse. Yeah. Newcastle are pretty good.
Man United?
Man United, I'll have to check now. I mean, Arsenal currently rank 19th out of 20th for conversion. 19th out of 20 for conversion from when shooting from direct free kicks.
Some room for improvement there, you would say.
There's definitely room for improvement, but it is still a small margin. I think even if we got really good, we're probably talking about 1 or maximum 2 more goals per season. So I guess it depends how big a concern you think Mikel Arteta thinks that is.
2 goals could be 6 points.
That's very true, Andrew. That is very true. So yeah, United are top half. Yeah, Southampton have converted 15% of their free kick shots, which is exceptionally good. We're down at 2%.
Right. I mean, there's a trade-off, though, isn't there? James Ward-Prowse is a brilliant free kick taker, but he's slower than you and me.
Exactly, as proven by David
Raya.
It is an interesting one. I think because basically the question is yes, clearly there's a margin there. Clearly there's room for improvement. How high is it on the list of priorities? Are Arsenal just of the mind that in a lot of situations where teams would shoot from direct free kicks, Arsenal choose to cross because they feel they pose greater threat that way? I have spoken to coaches who say direct free kicks are a waste of time. It's a bit like shooting from 30 yards. It's something that's kind of out of vogue in football. But I don't know. It's look, I like them. I have to be really simplistic and basic about it and say, I miss seeing a guy curl a free kick into the top corner. We mentioned Van Persie earlier. He was very good at that. And Thierry Henry has been very good at it in the past. It's a beautiful thing to see. So I wouldn't say no, that's for sure.
I think, Van Persie was good when they went in, but I have a feeling that there was a lot that didn't go in as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things, I think, that if you have somebody within your squad who's got that ability and got that talent, then lean into it by all means. But I'm not sure you should be, for example, looking for that kind of a specialist in the transfer market. It's not like
that's
you can
what
bring.
I mean. It's to what degree do you prioritize that?
Yeah, you can't bring a kicker off the bench, just to take the field goals or free kicks. Which is.
I actually think as well, it's not something we spoke about at all because again, it's 1 goal a season, maybe 2 in a really sort of good year for Arsenal. But Granit Xhaka wasn't bad. He scored the odd one here and there. And we lost him, of course. And he genuinely did have that sort of shooting power where he could be a threat from a narrow angle or 30 yards in a way that I just don't think too many of our squad currently can.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the wait goes on.
Okay, well, we'll continue to wait. Just before we go into the break then, I suppose we should just reflect on the fact that we're going into an international break, and the win at least, it does two things. It allows us to go into this break a little bit calm, without too much navel-gazing and introspection and vexation, if you like, from having not won a game or dropping more points. And it allows us to enjoy the fact that, Chelsea are, what did Gary Neville call them? What, $1 billion blue bottle jobs or whatever it was?
£1 billion blue bottle jobs.
But, £1 billion blue blubbering babies the whole time. Like, I can't remember seeing a team as just whingy and complaining and crying the whole time, from start to finish. To finish. They really were. I don't know if it's a reflection of the manager or if this is just the DNA of that vile institution that has seeped into the bones of these players. But like all the way through, from Enzo Fernandez to Caicedo to Fofana, Pedro Neto, even, was it Madueke? Not Madueke. Nkunku at one point, tried a big dive in the penalty area and he's lying on the ground as if he's been, just fuck off. So I enjoyed it from that perspective. They got what they deserved, which was fuck all.
Yeah, and there was lots of sort of needle in the game. But Chelsea didn't bring a great deal of quality. And I am sort of morbidly fascinated by the whole project, to be honest with you. They continue to accumulate really good players, and yet there is something definitively missing. So yeah, listen, it's always a big game for me, Chelsea, and I was delighted that we got the win and we got the 3 points.
What's missing, James, is a soul.
Well, I think it could well be. I mean, joking aside.
No, I mean it.
That is it.
Yeah.
I think that in the Abramovich era, they did actually have an identity. It might have been an identity that we loathed, but, with sort of Mourinho, Lampard, Terry, Drogba, Chelsea represented something. It might have been evil, but,
it
they represented
it.
Yeah,
it definitely was.
But now they are just sort of a nebulous nothing.
Yeah. Just a headline here on The Guardian. Chelsea set to sign Soul from Brazilian club, but they're going to loan him out for a couple of seasons. £48 million, I believe. He's only 16, so he's got a way to go.
14-year contract.
All right, listen, we will take a little break here and we will be back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. It would be remiss of me, James, for the day that's in it and given your heritage and background to not wish you and everybody listening, who also, I presume, has Irish heritage of some way or in some way, a happy St. Patrick's Day. So there you go.
Oh, yeah. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. I can't believe that slipped by me. There you go. Now, Andrew, I was very prepared for this question section and had lovingly selected a number of questions. But I don't know what I've done with them. They appear to have disappeared.
But I mean, what did you write them on a scroll and somehow that scroll has fucking fallen off your desk with your quill and parchment? Where is it?
Full reveal, I copied and pasted them into a note on my MacBook, and I think that I accidentally pasted over them all with all my Ange Out tweets that I went to find. So all I've got a document that's like Ask questions, and it's just full of
He's gone here. This is the technical snafu that happens. Let me refresh. And we should get James back. refresh, you fucker. Here we go. Now, are you back?
I think I'm back. Am I back?
You're back. What happened was you said about your Arsecast questions, and now all you have is a collection of and it went all digitally weird. So I think
I was falling down a big digital well.
Exactly, and I think the Ange has infected whatever connection we were going through there. We went down an Ange pipeline on the internet, and it took us into a dark, dark place.
Well, we'll come back to that because there is some fun to be had at Tottenham's expense.
All right. So what you're saying is you don't have any questions?
No, but in the interim, while I was sort of getting booted off the chat and then coming back on, I have grabbed some. So I've rediscovered them.
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
That's what this is all about, really. It's about you going first to buy me some time.
Okay, yeah. to pick up some questions again. We had quite a lot of questions about Jurrien Timber.
Okay.
On the Discord and on Blue Sky as well. And what about this one? Because there was questions about, like, is Timber up there for our player of the season and all that kind of stuff, which, let's get to the end of the season and make a decision on that. But Ronan James, and some of the other questions were about, like, should Timber be getting more flowers because of... there was definitely one there that I had. Doc Menace, who's at Shakistan on the Discord, talking about how Timber's come back from an ACL injury. He says it feels like we don't talk enough about how much he does for us. I want to shout him out and give him some flowers. Maybe a bowl of shamrock today you could give him. Yeah. But Ronan James, as I said, he's or JJ817 blah, 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 blah on bsky.social. He says, can we talk about how good Timber is as a one-on-one defender and how crucial he will be against Real Madrid, which I think is an interesting aspect or an interesting way to go at this.
Yes, it does feel like it will be him who plays right back against Real Madrid at this point in time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did Ben White get on yesterday?
No.
And nor was he selected for England, with Thomas Tuchel saying it came a bit early for him.
But he's ready to go back.
He is.
He's ready to go back.
He is, and I look forward to seeing it. But, so I think without that, it's very difficult to see Ben White being ready to play that Madrid game, unless he's needed. I think Timber is sort of the guy in possession of the shirt, and it may stay that way for the time being. I do think he's a really exceptional player. I think at the start of the season, there was a lot of talk about him and everyone was very impressed within Arsenal and outside Arsenal. And then maybe there's that sort of like, as the season wore on, we just sort of got used to how consistent he is, and it became a bit less noteworthy. But the physical side of it is fascinating. I mean, this is a player coming back from a major injury, who I think we all at the start of the season would have said, well, he'll be slowly introduced. We'll want to take our time with him. We'll want to manage his minutes. And what's happened with Ben White's not afforded us that opportunity. And he stood up to that challenge and produced a level of consistency that is fantastic. And I think he's brilliant. I always thought he was brilliant, and I was gutted about what happened in his first season. I'm really glad he's getting to show it now. He is a very tenacious individual, and he relishes the duels, the one-on-one battle. And I think psychologically, he just seems so difficult to disturb. He almost reminds me a little bit of Lauren in that respect, where
yes, I can see that.
He's just super tough, and you can't really seem to get in his head. Nothing phases him. And that's absolutely the mentality we'll need against Real Madrid. Yeah.
I mean, up against probably Vinicius Jr., who's an incredibly talented player, and on his day can cause anybody problems. I think it's going to be a fascinating battle, to be honest. He is, I agree with you, and with that Lauren comparison as well. I think there is an unflappability about him. He doesn't look at all phased. Whatever happened with him and Maresca on the sideline was quite funny late on. I don't know if you caught that, but they were having words. They were having words, and then it was just like, oh, let's shake hands. I think he's tough, he's strong, he's quick, he's good on the ball, he's good in the tackle, he's good in the air. The early stages of this game were, I think Cucurella sort of went in on him late in the opening few minutes in an aerial challenge and left him down on the ground a little bit. And if that was sort of designed to try and, rattle him in any way, it didn't work. It really didn't work. I think he's just an outstanding player. And given the context of the season, as you say, the fact that he's come back from an ACL and played to this level and with this consistency is real credit to him. And I am curious, now in the final part of the season, how we manage those minutes and how we manage him and Ben White. If Ben White starts the game, let's say, before Real Madrid, that wouldn't surprise me at all. What's that? Is it Fulham or Everton? I think it could be Everton.
Yeah, it is. That would make sense, I think. And who knows, maybe there'll be a kind of behind closed doors game to give Ben White a few more minutes before then, during the international break.
Yeah, maybe.
That wouldn't be too surprising. But I do think Timber's excellent. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, the sort of stylistic comparison between him and White. Like, how do you see them as different in terms of what they offer the team?
I think White is maybe naturally a little more attacking. Mm-hmm. Like, he likes the overlaps a bit more, but we're seeing some of that from Timber. How do I see that? Yeah, I think that the other thing we have to take into account with Timber's season, like, when did we see the best of Ben White? It was when he had Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard as that triangle, that trio operating in tandem. You can't have a trio operating in tandem, can you?
No, I actually came across that problem in an article the other day. I was like, that
doesn't work. What do you call a 3-person bicycle? Is there such a thing? Actually, you know what it is? It's one of those ones. I don't know if you get these in London, but you get them around Dublin, where they'll have like 8 or 10 women or men on a stag party or a hen do, cycling this kind of weird bicycle thing, pumping out music, going around. It seems to be a thing. So maybe 2 is enough on a bicycle. That's what I'm saying. But look, that's the thing that we had when we got the best of Ben White, right? It was White, Odegaard, Saka, that triangle, and they knew each other and they developed that relationship and played with such frequency that it was really, really effective for us over on that side of the pitch. Whereas this season, Timber has come in, he's had the injury, Odegaard's been injured, Saka's been out injured, he's had different players ahead of him on the right-hand side at the moment or over the last couple of weeks. He's had a 17-year-old who, I think is a brilliant, brilliant talent and has huge potential. But all of those things, I think, have maybe not allowed us to see some of the best of Jurrien Timber, and he's had to maybe play a more sensible or conservative game, if that's the way of putting it, because that's what's been required in the absence of those players and in the absence of that sort of relationship that Ben White has enjoyed for a couple of seasons at Arsenal.
Yes, I think that's true. And it is still, although it feels like a long time since we signed him, his first season in English football, his first season adapting to this league, this team, this culture. I think he's been excellent, and I'm very, very interested to see how he fares against Real Madrid. I think up against Vinicius, that is something he will relish.
I mean, rattle that guy. I mean, I know he's a brilliant player. He absolutely is a brilliant player. No two ways about it. But I do think there are things that, are not ideal in his game. That if he gets a bit upset, if he gets a bit cranky, if he gets a bit like, he doesn't really pick himself up the right way at times. I think we saw that actually in the game against Atletico Madrid. in the week. So, be a bit snide, a bit conniving as well. I think he has a bit of that in his locker as well, which could be good.
Absolutely. What about this question, now that I've got some, from Matt, Brother of Light, who says, does the emergence of Mikel Merino save us 100 million in the summer? But more seriously, he says, do you think he'll be seen as a kind of last throw of the dice player, even when everyone is back to fitness?
Maybe. I mean,
we have lamented that at times, haven't we? A sort of inability to, I don't know, create that kind of chaos in latter stages.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about a plan B or a plan C, maybe, if Merino plays more or less every game between now and the end of the season as our centre forward, or at least a good collection of those games, then what you have next season is a midfielder who you hope will be able to operate at a high level in midfield, but who can also give you something up front that maybe you don't have. It all depends on who we sign, though. I mean, let's say it's Sesko, and you have Sesko and you have Havertz. Do they not, until both of them get injured, obviously, give you the sort of plan B option? They tick those boxes. So it depends on what kind of forward we bring in, but certainly a guy who at least would feel comfortable enough being asked to do a job up front or to be a supplementary striker. Yeah, why not?
I think it's as interesting to kind of wonder if and when we might be able to make use of those runs from deeper areas, as a midfielder. That's what he was bought for, to kind of be a guy who arrives late and scores goals, amongst other things. But I think that aspect of his play is clearly, one of the things that attracted Mikel Arteta. And I still think, for as well as he's done in this spell as a centre forward, I think we're yet to see the best of him in midfield. So I'm kind of more curious to see if and when we might get that. I have to say, it feels quite... I feel like his sort of potential impact on the team is relatively limited by some of the other players we have. Like if Declan Rice is playing in that number 8 position, like there's only so many minutes that Merino's going to get. He's clearly a player who has some really valuable attributes. I think particularly in the penalty area, I think he can be a real threat. But I'm just curious to see sort of how Arteta envisages him making that contribution in the longer term.
There was another question, actually, about whether or not using Merino is an indicator that... it comes from Haider Javed, who's hj14.bsky.social. Apologies if I mispronounced the name. He said, if Merino starts as the 9 against Madrid, will that confirm we move for Sesko in the summer? To me, Arteta has firmly established a preference for a tall physical focal point. I mean, do you think that's what it is, or is it just literally he is the best option that we have based on who we have available?
And maybe based on how this team is kind of set up to play. We kind of constructed the team for this season around the idea of Kai Havertz playing at centre forward. And to go with a different type of striker, let's say a Trossard or a Martinelli, might mean going back to the drawing board to a certain extent. And certain things we're able to do with a more physical centre forward, we'd have to set aside. I wouldn't necessarily read in a great deal about next season. For example, Mikel Arteta's admiration for Alexander Isak is well documented. And he's a very different type of centre forward, I think, to a Havertz and or a Merino.
Is there a physical connection or similarity, though? Or is that just sort of incidental?
I mean, they're all tall. They're all tall. I don't think Isak is as robust as Havertz, like in terms of dual winning, upper body strength. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't watched a ton of Isak. I watched him score what proved to be the winning goal in the Carabao Cup final yesterday. took it very handily as well. But I think there are things that Isak can do that none of these other forwards we're talking about can do in terms of movement in channels, dribbling ability, capacity to go past people with the ball. So close control, I think, probably as well. So I think, but what I'm saying is I wouldn't project forward too much into next season. I think it's about making the best of what we have for this season. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's that. But I do think there are physical things that Mikel Arteta likes and wants. We've seen that in the profile of player who plays at the left 8. I mean,
we recruit so often for physical attributes. I think we've brought in such powerful players, and Isak is in that category. I just think when you're comparing him to the guy that Mikel Arteta, with great dramatic irony, it turned out called a genetic powerhouse in. I just think Havertz is just an absolute beast physically in a way that few players are. I don't know. I'm. It's such a big issue, the centre forward situation, and it's such a big topic for the summer. But I think that I don't think what's happening with Merino necessarily means therefore we buy Sesko. I don't think it's quite that straightforward.
Okay, we will see.
We'll see
in due course for sure.
Yeah, we shall discover. Okay, here is a question from Shatner's Bassoon. And they say, "Good morning, chaps. I've noticed a tendency for us all to downplay our Champions League chances. In other pods, you guys have kind of laughed about it or talked about it as a massive long shot. I totally get that. But if we look rationally, all the teams left in have flaws. We are really hard to beat and score against. And the games come at a time when, fingers crossed, we'll have the least injured squad we've had all season. And some much worse teams have won the competition in the past. Am I a deluded fool?"
No, I think you have to have some hope, don't you? You have to allow yourself to dream a little when it comes to football. There's enough going on in the world that could bring you down. So why deprive yourself of at least the possibility of thinking about winning the Champions League? He's absolutely right. We are tough and we are hard to beat. All the teams have flaws, some less so than others, but every team has its weaknesses, and 100%. There've been some teams that have won the Champions League down the years who, haven't been anyone's favourites to do that. Cup football and knockout football can be really random at times. So, look, I think it is going to be really, really difficult. The thing I would say is that while I think we do have strengths, I think our biggest weakness is goal scoring at this moment in time. And it's just hard to feel confident that you could win the biggest competition in European football with that as your main weakness, Like, maybe we could do like Greece 2004. Was it 2004 when Greece won the Euros?
2004. And
it was like, they defended their way and nicked goals here and there and won the tournament, and amazing. I just don't know, with the attacking talent that's available to some of the best teams who are left in this competition, that is realistic. As good as we are, and as good as the defenders that we have are, and as organised as we are, and as disciplined as we are, if we get through against Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, Jude Bellingham in the next round, and then would it be PSG
or Aston Villa?
Right, so PSG. Then you've got all the players that they have available to them, Barcola and Dembele, and I know they're not quite as potent. And then it could be somebody from the other side of the draw in the final, which could be Bayern Munich, it could be Barcelona, and you look at what Barcelona have got available to. You look at what Barcelona did last night against Atletico Madrid. 2-0 down, came back to win it 4-2, and like Lamine Yamal and Lewandowski and Rafinha, it just seems like a really, really, really long shot that we could get through all those games defensively and also score the goals that we might need to win them. Who knows? Like penalties all the way through. You ready for 3 penalty shootouts?
My God, my nerves.
I know.
Yeah, there is definitely precedent for teams kind of slightly grinding their way to success. And I do think that's probably what would be required. I mean, we were in better shape this time last year and we went out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I keep coming back to. This is the really high end of sort of football competition. Probably the kind of peak in terms of sort of club competition. And I'm not quite sure we are in that place. But especially with 2 legs, what happened at Wembley yesterday shows you in a one-off game, anything is possible. If we get past Madrid, I'll be telling everyone that we're going to win it. I do think that we face a mammoth task in the next round. As excited as I am about it, we're up against a team that are sort of serial winners in this competition in a way that we have never been, really.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be tough. But yeah, I really want it for the players because it's been a really long, taxing season for the fans as well. And I just think, wouldn't it be the most wonderful punchline if it ended in some sort of glory?
Yeah, it would be amazing. It would be amazing, genuinely.
But I do think it's a long shot at this point in time.
Yeah. But you never know. Football is weird and cup football is weird. Stranger things have happened.
They have.
Don't ask me to list them, but stranger things have happened.
Well, one need only look at the last time we got to a Champions League final.
Yeah.
You could say we don't have a centre forward now, but we didn't have a defence then. And we cobbled something together that worked brilliantly. So you never know.
What about this one? Let me ask you this one just while I'm here. I quite enjoyed this. Where is it? 1 second.
All the questions are going missing today.
All the questions. Oh, I know why I can't find it, because it was not on the Discord. It was on Blue Sky. It comes from Gabrielle B, who's at blankgab.bsky.social. He said, what piece of information was so important that David Raya felt he had to run the length of the pitch to tell Declan Rice before he took his free kick?
Yeah. I've no idea. And I wondered the same thing.
Yeah. Don't hit it into the wall.
Yeah. And then as he's halfway back, just, damn it!
I told you.
Yeah, I don't know. Presumably it's something about Sanchez and the goalkeeper
I would
position.
imagine, yeah.
But yeah, it was surreal, actually. And unfortunately, whatever advice it was, didn't pay dividends. Don't hit the wall would be great. Maybe we should do a tifo. You know what I mean? Before the game.
Don't hit the wall.
Yeah. 60,000 people holding up placards that spell out "Don't hit the wall." We'd hold them up every time there's a free kick. That adds the added bonus that we wouldn't have to watch. So everybody wins.
Yeah, Declan Rice about to take the free kick. He looks to the stands and goes, "Oh yeah,
yeah."
I forgot about
if only someone had told me.
I knew that. Go on. You had a question. I think a more serious.
Well,
one.
it's no. I was going to take this opportunity to do the Ange Out stuff because there's some quite good fun to be had.
Shall we provide the context of this particular batch of Ange Out games where Tottenham were beaten yesterday by Fulham at Craven Cottage, 2-0.
Yeah. Did you see there was a clip as well of a fan sort of calling him out?
Yeah.
I think from the tunnel or something, and he sort of bites back a bit.
Yeah.
At a guy with his phone. I mean, he was doing all his shtick of sort of looking at the floor and seeming really sad yesterday.
Oh no, we've bloody lost again, mate. Can't believe it.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a quick scan of
as you do
various social media platforms.
Okay, let's do it.
So JP said, if football was played through words, Ange would walk this league. It's a big if, that, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's played against opponents' managers working out how to beat you. 15 league defeats is atrocious. Still a lot of defeats to come. How has this been allowed to continue for so long? Hashtag Ange out. I like that they're trailing still a lot of defeats to come. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a foregone conclusion. What about this one, Stu? Just fucking sack the cunt. He goes on. Nobody genuinely believes we're going to win the Europa League. We're shit every week, and the wallaby shagging fraud is taking us further and further backwards every passing week. Hashtag Ange out.
Wallaby shagging.
The wallaby shagging fraud. With apologies to our Australian listenership. That is good fun. This manager, says Lee, has spent 350 million, finding it extremely hard to see how fans are still behind him. I can only assume it's because they feel there's substance behind his words. But the league table doesn't lie. He's just a very good second-hand car salesman, full of shit. Don't know if that specifies that the car is full of shit or the salesman. But
well, if the car is full of shit and he manages to sell it, then
he's exceptional.
He's very, very good at selling second-hand cars. I'm not sure I quite understand the reference.
No.
But, maybe it's what he does in his spare time. He's got a little dealership somewhere close to the stadium.
Mujim, we can debate if he is the worst manager, but no doubt he is the most arrogant. What an arrogant cunt. He genuinely thinks the fans, media and players are the issue, not these ridiculous tactics. This is nice for historical context from LJ, who says, Tottenham have never lost more than 7 games in Premier League history. Not under Ramos, not under Ardiles, not even under Gross. We've already lost 7 home games this season under Postecoglou. Let that sink in. He's the worst manager we've had by a long shot.
Wow.
It places him right up there. And what about this Jedi? 15 losses in the league is criminal. Is that right? 15 losses?
Yeah. Let me just double check. I'll check the Premier League table.
Please.
Spurs currently sitting in 14th, played 29, won 10, drawn 4, lost 15.
Wow. So 15 league losses is criminal.
And they've scored more goals than us.
And then it goes, hashtag, that is very funny. Where could their issues be? Hashtag Ange out. Along with all the other bum-licking losers who don't have a winner's mentality. Don't know who that applies to, but...
the owners, some of the players, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and then David Levy sums it up. Ange is the worst manager Spurs have had this millennium. He's full of excuses, takes no responsibility, naive to the extreme and just utterly incompetent. The team get worse every week and the players are regressing. The club is in a shambles and it's all his fault. I don't know if I agree with that, to be honest, but...
That it's all his fault or that it's in a shambles? I think
certainly they're a shambles.
The shambles bit is right,
Well,
which is good.
I think it's terrific what's happening over there, but I don't think it's all his fault. It's interesting, isn't it?
No, I suspect, given the frequency with which this happens to any manager or every manager that comes to Tottenham Hotspur, there might be something institutional at play here. The old DNA, the Bursey Diaz. It could be that.
It is the history.
Indeed, it is the history of the Tottenham, as a wise man would say.
It's the history of the Tottenham.
So yeah, that's certainly enjoyable. Seeing that happen at the other end of the table.
Sure is. Okay, what about these couple, just to get us out of here? I miss Shaka on the Discord. He says, "Hi gents, my brother who's a big Arsenal fan, his girlfriend is a Newcastle fan. And I saw via her Instagram that he was sporting a Newcastle shirt to watch the league final with her. Is this shameful, and what is the correct response?"
Interesting one, that, isn't it? Because is that shameful? Yeah, I mean, are we assuming that's because he's supporting her or because he doesn't want Liverpool to win it? Like,
I presume he's being a supportive partner, boyfriend.
Yeah.
She's a big Newcastle fan. I mean, I think
it would be a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, I think it is utterly shameful, and I'm sorry, I'm Shaka, you have no brother anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting watching the game yesterday because I sort of had it on and off, you know. And Newcastle went ahead, and I was like, "Oh, it's quite good fun." And then it got to 2-0, and I was like, "Oh, that's really good fun." You know, Liverpool are unravelling before our eyes. And then when it got to about 10 minutes to go, I did think the only thing that would be funnier than Liverpool losing this game would be Newcastle bottling it from here.
Yes, same. I was exactly the same.
And I found myself, like, when... who's the Italian guy? Chiesa scored, got one back, and all the Newcastle fans, like, looked worried in the stands. I sort of found myself willing Liverpool to score again. Just out of sort of some sort of masochist, you know what I mean? Some cruel part of my mind.
Fuck you, Ant, and fuck you, Deck.
Yeah.
That's where my mind was.
But I must say, all in all, I was pleased about the outcome. I'm you know, we don't have, there's no love lost for Eddie Howe and his team between Arsenal, you know, and that particular group of players. But they've done their time, the Newcastle fans, waiting for a trophy. So I thought, fair enough, really. And I'm curious about what's happening at Liverpool. I'm curious about it. Not in a way that it applies to us. I don't think it has any Premier League ramifications, but yeah, it's been an interesting week for them, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. A difficult week, but you know, 2 cup exits doesn't necessarily mean your Premier League hopes are gone, you know, as we remember from the last time we won it, and we had a similar kind of week and then bounced back, so we'll have to see what they do. I mean, am I being a bit over the top here, but should Newcastle have the trophy stripped from them because Eddie Howe wore a tracksuit to a cup final?
I didn't think of that. Yeah, I mean, maybe he was just very confident he was going to win and he didn't want to get an expensive suit covered in champagne. I think that might be giving a bit too much credit, though. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe the best result would be declare the whole thing null and void.
Yes. Final one then from the Purple Onion. Gentlemen, which players make the Mount Rushmore of all time Chelsea cunts I wouldn't piss on if they were on fire?
John Terry.
Oh, yeah. There's only 4. It's 4 on Mount Rushmore, isn't it?
I mean, at one time you would have said Ashley Cole. But I don't know if sort of, you know, time and distance is maybe offering him a slither of redemption.
Can I add one? You know, we'll do it together. I've got to put Dennis Wise.
Yeah, good shout. Some of our listeners won't remember Dennis Wise. Got choked up then, thinking about the fact that
some of them
Wise once existed. Yeah, and that I'm so much older than our listeners. But Dennis Wise was... He was sort of characterised as kind of... If you've ever seen the musical Oliver, he was kind of like the Artful Dodger, like a sort of cheeky Cockney pickpocket child. But he was actually, again, like the Artful Dodger, committing crime and needed to be clamped down upon.
Yes. Yeah, he was. I think it was Alex Ferguson said Dennis Wise could start a fight in an empty room. Yes.
And actually, for all our differences with Newcastle, I think an antipathy for Dennis Wise is something we share because he had an ill-fated spell as a kind of director of football type figure under Mike Ashley. And they weren't too keen on him, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, Drogba caused us more pain than most. You know?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of... I think he's remembered for his quality, and rightly so. He's a brilliant player, but there was a lot of gamesmanship and diving.
Yeah, he was an unpleasant character back in the day. Does he quite make it into the realms of Terry and Wise?
I mean, I guess Mourinho's on there, right?
Could be, or Diego Costa, maybe.
Oh.
Again. Can I suggest one quite recent?
Yeah.
Marcus Alonso. Or am I giving him too much credit? But I really, really didn't like that guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. And okay. He had a few run-ins with Hector Bellerin, didn't he?
Yeah.
So we've got Wise, we've got Terry.
Marcus Alonso. I mean, Jose Mourinho, he is Chelsea.
Yeah. I think he's got to go on there. I think he's got to go on there. Just thinking through other players they had that I did. I mean, yeah, there was some that were sort of relatively inoffensive. It's really from that kind of Mourinho era team, I think.
I mean, there were some like who were there and you wouldn't necessarily associate them as Chelsea players per se. Like, for example, Mark Hughes or Vinnie Jones. You know, Vinnie Jones was, a real villain on the pitch, but you would associate him far more with Wimbledon than with Chelsea. I don't know how many games he ended up playing for Chelsea. He was only there like a short period of time, wasn't he? Maybe a season. I'm not sure, but he could certainly be in the conversation.
Yeah, I think we've hit all the big ones. I think Drogba escapes, but he's definitely a contender.
Okay, yeah. I think we'll go with that.
Honourable mention to Ashley Cole and Didier Drogba, I would say.
Yeah. They can be below the mountain somewhere, I guess, on the pathway up to the Chelsea Mount Rushmore. Okay, we will leave it there. We are, now heading into an interlull, so we'll keep an eye on our players, and hopefully everybody can go away with their countries and come back unscathed and fit and healthy. So it's probably going to be a little bit quieter in terms of the podcast schedule, but at some point over the interlull, we will bring you an episode of Waffle, which is the podcast in which James and I talk about anything and everything except Arsenal. And we'll also have an episode of The 30 for you over on Patreon this afternoon as well, so you can join us for that. That is patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, take it easy, fuck Chelsea, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.